It's really an honor to be here. Yeah, I've always been interested in the bridge between the film grammar and the interactive mechanic. I went to university to do films. It was the late 90s. And the year I had to choose like the specialty, a new program emerged. It was called multimedia. So I learned to code, I learned to animate, I learned to shoot, and to be somehow creatively independent. I was part of a video collective at that time that was called Kino. Kino. The motto was do well with nothing, do better with little, do it now. And it was the beginning of mini DVs, and so it was the first time that we had access to equipments. So it was a kind of an exhilarating moment, and we just said, like, let's do stuff. And we used to do project in really short period of time, like 24-hour process, and write, shoot. And my very first interactive film was done in that context. In the morning, I had the idea of doing stereoscopic film, and then I remembered, and so I had these little gels of blue and red gels, and then I remembered that Ghostbuster sticker album I had where you had secret codes. You could write, like, look through red and see something behind it. So really quickly, there was this kind of aha moment where I said, oh, I could instead present two different images, and the public could do their own edit.
The trick is to look through one piece of celluloid or the other. To the blue.
So basically, if you look through the blue, you see the red image. And the idea was to write and show and present a story that would kind of complement perspective.
That night, she was so pretty. I didn't even notice she had lipstick on her teeth.
That's weird. You don't see the image.
It's love at first sight.
Strange. Excuse me. Let's see if it.
That night, she was so pretty. I didn't even notice she had lipstick on her teeth. It was love at first sight.
So, a bit accidentally, I came up with this idea and some kind of non-linear editing technique that I later called continuous parallel, so that where you have two streams into which you kind of go from one to the other. And through that process, I tried to find other figures that I could put together. So for me, it was a moment where I kind of realized that like the interactivity was a mindset. It was not really about something fancy or technologic. In this, with the red and blue celluloid, I was able to do a collective interactive cinema experience. It was, done really fast, but still today, like people 15 years after, still remember that kind of magical moment. And a bit at the same time that I did this project, I started to tour with Arcade Fire. It was the very beginning. They just released an album, and it was an interesting time. It was the mid-2000s. The music industry was shifting, like the paradigm of distribution, of how we listen to it, how we talk about it, was changing, and nobody was really knowing how it will evolve. They had the intelligence to be independent creatively, so basically we were sitting in the living room and figuring it out together and making jokes and just being goofy. the first project I did with them were just, how could I say, sophisticated shells, meaning that the website was, telling the dates of the show or showing the lyrics. But to get that information, we made this really cryptic and elaborate graphic thing. So, for instance, to get the dates of the shows, you had to give a marshmallow to a sphinx, and then if you go too fast, it will get afraid. So it was really painful to get access to the information, but we thought it was some kind of an extension of the mythology of an album. And that was also one of the other things that we were thinking about. Like, it was a moment where we were losing the artwork. Like, we basically ended up with kind of a really lame JPEG on a phone, and that was the image related to an album. So we're thinking, how can we extend that visual complement? How do we create that mythology surrounding an album? Maybe the web could be that place that aggregates and offer a universe and some kind of a mood connected to songs. In that case, for the album The Suburbs, I kind of came out because we were limited to that format, right? And I suggested to the band that we use the M4A format that was used for podcast. So normally, like radio shows were using it to flip album covers every 3 or 4 minutes when they had a long radio show. So I suggested, I thought we could probably like index every second the file and change the image constantly. So it became, we transformed this kind of unknown audio format into some kind of karaoke-esque visual digital album. And the other thing that was interesting is that we were not limited to one image. We could have a lot of image, but also we could add some good old hyperlinks. So I asked the band to kind of feed me with stuff, like inspiration, like a riff from Neil Young that they stole for a song, and it just added a kind of another layer of content to the musical experience. For instance, in Deep Blue, it was a kind of a reference to the Kasparov chess match. So using really kind of old school and unsexy tech, we were able to offer something kind of richer. But then Apple kind of freaked out because we were kind of using a format they didn't intend to. So they kind of took out that option from iTunes. For the second album, I suggested to the band that instead of focusing on the shell, on like a fancy box, we should focus on the actual contents and just create original fragments of experience and make the website kind of connect them all together. So we started to, with the band members and some other colleagues, started to create like some fake infomercial. In this one, Richard and Tim went to one of the last Price is Right TV show with the 1-800 Neon Bible t-shirt, and kind of made some kind of subliminal promotion for the album. So the idea was kind of pre-transmedia concept of just kind of tackling every possible channel and create some kind of mindfuck. So this was also reappropriation of like crazy Jesus freak YouTube clips, and reappropriate it, but we never kind of connected it with the album. But that we did a phone line, so that the phone line existed.
Hello, thank you for calling Neon Bible. For an important message from the founders of the Neon Bible program, please dial extension 7777 right now.
So it was promoted as some kind of spiritual solution. So we thought it was hilarious, but then we forgot about it. And 3 months later, we said, hey, wait a minute, we have a phone line. And we opened it, and it was like thousands and thousands of audio recording of really diverse people. And it was kind of a snapshot of an era, like, and some people that were looking for God, some other people that kind of understood the Arcade Fire connection. So it became this kind of confessional where people were talking to that machine. Is it loud enough? Yeah. Okay.
You guys changed my life, and I just wanted you to know that your product basically gave me my life back.
Then it was really diverse also, and I think we would never have that kind of conflict in another way.
I don't know if you're trying to be like really cool and different with your new voice message thing, but I'm not buying it. I'll never listen to your music, ever. You just inspired such a violent passion in me. I mean, I obviously...
But the fact that it was a machine, that we were talking to a machine, we got really emotional, like touching stuff, and it became the narrative thread of a feature documentary. So what you've seen is excerpt of a feature film I did on the Neon Bible process, the touring, the recording of that album, and those messages became the backbone of that linear documentary. So it was, mid 2000, MTV and others were basically stopping to show music video. Like, it was more of that and that. And the band kind of asked me if I was interested in doing a music video. And I was like, it won't pass on TV. And online, YouTube was still really bad. Like, it was small window, super pixelated. I was like, I would spend a lot of energy and effort and love into that, and it would be this really ridiculously small pixelated window. So as a really pragmatic thing, I was like, kids will watch that on a computer. Why not take advantage of the platform? I knew how to code, and I thought, I pitched the idea to the band. I was like, why not? I tell them, like, imagine that you're in the living room and the news, the person that tell the news turn to you and start to talk to you, like that kind of weird feeling. I want to make that something that feels like a film, but that react to what you do. So as that was for Neon Bible, there was this idea of kind of acknowledging or making a link to Méliès, or that kind of a new encounter between a spectator and a piece, and reference to magic and something quite mystical. It was important that there was no interface, there was no explanation, and that we were using film codes. There was a title at the beginning. We added some grain to the images, there was credits at the end where I was saying I was directing a website. And people were, I remember when and that was kind of a bold move. I was normally coding, and now I was telling, I directed a website. And that was a really strange concept at the time. But it was calculated into changing the way people were seeing what I do, and also seeing what this project was. And just by changing the language and how I was branding the project, it completely changed the dynamic. And people in the newspaper and magazine and blogs just started to think, oh, it's a film, it's a music video, and it started to be considered in, MTV Music Award and stuff like that, and it was a web page basically. So it was, I think, some kind of a accidental change of paradigm. For me, it was really pragmatic. I didn't thought it was that exceptional, but in retrospective, I think it was one of those projects that kind of opened the eye of the possibility of bridging film and video game or interactive mechanics. So after that, I was like, wow, this is amazing. I want to dig more into that premise. So one of the other projects I did a bit after that was reimagining Google Map and imagining if I could just take out the roofs of the house and spy on people. So we shot in a studio on a crane on different heights and just stitched like a bit like in Google Map, like continuously stitched. So we were using again, a mechanic that everybody knew: zoom in, zoom out, pan, and that was basically it. So it was something that people knew, so I was starting from a common ground. And then we were kind of playing with that, the narrative. So there was a story of people that are all alone in there, and then there's this dog that gets hits, and then all people get together, and anyway, it's a song about loneliness. So for me, it was interesting to kind of use kind of a premise that people knew, and kind of just imagine what would happen if we would see people walk as tiny ants in Google Map. This is after a couple of interactive projects that was based on, mouse and keys. I thought it could be cool to kind of transcend that interface, and sorry. And I was just thinking, what is the most primitive interaction that we have with music? It's dancing, right? So I used the webcam as some kind of a really simple movement detection. So basically, if I move slowly, it will move the image slowly, and if I move fast. So again, a blink to the past of cinema, the Zoetrope, Phenakistic and other optical toy. And I can show you, it's really simple. You can see me detecting the difference between the frames. If I move fast, you can see the peak of the movement. So the idea is there's no minority report move. It's more open. People dance as they like. It's a song about this girl stuck in the suburbs that feels different. And for me, again, like the interactivity needs to be, needs to tell something. And there's something a bit awkward and weird, and at the same time a bit liberating into, how could I say, dance in front of your computer in your office or your living room. So as you can see, like if I stop you have this kind of animated GIF kind of aesthetic of looping on the. So in the choreography, there was this thinking of how can we re-choreograph the choreography. I'll just skip a bit. So even the costume design was thought that how it could be cool to kind of play with the speed. So each person makes it their own. And there's something quite magical about not feeling an interface. And I think that's one of the challenge of VR. Like, how do we get away of those goofy controllers in your hands and just feel free in the experience? Sorry. So how we work. Here we have Caroline on the left, my girlfriend and our director, and Edouard on the right, a creative developer. And basically we always start with a really ghetto, lo-fi prototype where we validate intuition. And then from there, we share that example to the rest of the team so that they can really understand the potential of it. So with that in our hands, we were able to show it to the choreographer, to the costume designer, and like, I see, I can imagine this thing that kind of rips off, and the choreographer would say, okay, we'll do really simple gesture so that, you know, it's kind of satisfying when it kind of cuts into it. If we would have just kind of tell it with words, I often see like, they would say, yeah, but they don't completely understand. And the beauty also with it is that this is a workshop we did in Barcelona, and I use the same code, but shared it with the students and see what they could do with it. And I was really amazed how diverse with the kind of the same grammar, the same technology, and they bring it into something that was really graphic, something that was abstract, something that was based on just colors. And for me, it was one of the first time that was kind of sharing the code. And normally I develop things for a specific purpose, and then this is what it is. But in that case, I was curious to see how using the same tools, the same code, where it would lead. So this is the first personal project I did. Before that, it was mainly developing a project where I had a lot of creative freedom, but based on a song for another artist. Bla-Bla was my first opportunity to do a project from scratch. It was with the National Film Board of Canada. I think some of you met AATOAA a couple weeks ago. So you know about the NFB, how cool they are, open to and supportive of artists and all. And basically I had a carte blanche of doing something web-based. And for me it was, I had a desire to kind of think about that relation that we have with the piece. In interactivity, you as a human with your own personality is a kind of a snapshot from the piece to you. And as an author, I try to kind of embrace that spectrum of diversity and imagine my little nephew, hyperactive 5-year-old, that will click like a maniac, and then on the other side my mom that will click once and then watch, and then 30 seconds after that will click again, and see how all these types of interaction can be rewarding, satisfying, meaningful, and that people can make it their own. So Bla-Bla is about communication, kind of a relation between you and that little character. It's about human communication. The premise is really simple. It's a linear piece, built in 2 chapters. Each chapter has its own thing, and the only instruction is click anywhere. Human beings have some things that are kind of unite all of them, I think, in some way. We are, I think, curious being. We are suspicious of things that we don't really know. We have this strong desire of making it our own. And paradoxically, I think we want to be taken by the hand. So it's to, with all these things in mind, how can we make something that will work? So then in this project, you kind of build up on things where, a bit like in game design, where you start with little things where you understand the cause and the effects, and slowly build on this. So in this thing, you feed this little character, and you basically start to learn his own language. You can make him repeat, and acknowledging also the people that will try to break or test the limits of the project. So for us, it was we wanted to make something that really felt really simple, but with a kind of an infinity of nuance, I would say. So it was kind of part sound toy, something narrative. And this idea also that it evolves, and how you unfold it kind of continue to make surprise. We wanted also to I think one of the things that connects all the projects we do is that they always feel handmade. I think we don't really feel the computer, and for us it's a way to kind of make the interface invisible, make us forget about the technology. So in this chapter, it's a bit like a grid. So you have this cycle, and the character will start to kind of interact with each other, but so we could see it a bit like a partition. And again, if you try to in that project, I didn't really knew what would be the end result. One of the things I knew is that I wanted to create that encounter, have kind of a genuine connection with a kind of an entity that we don't fully understand. And I remember, like as a kid, like holding a nut in front of a chipmunk and think, will he bite my fingers? Is he cool? And just have that kind of a moment of grace where he just catch the nut and that was kind of a source of inspiration, and also like be able to kind of generate reactions. This is my nephew, one of the best beta tester. So, in a nutshell, that was the narrative of the project. There's a really importance into a pacing, rhythm, and a sense of moving forward in an experience. But the story in itself is not necessarily a finality. It's more about how you feel, how you get engaged into a project. So often the story, between quotes, is figured out while we sculpt or knit the project. It's always a bit intellectually unsexy to say that, but it's a fact. So I don't care. Again, as I was saying, for me it's really important that the project feels a certain kind of fragility. I'm not a good animator, actually I'm a bad animator, but I took advantage of that so that you have this kind of weird, goofy puppet kind of moving from one frame to the other, and that feeling of handmade animation kind of have a kind of a short circuit how we engage with a digital platform. But then making handmade stuff is kind of not natural for this canvas, so there's a lot, it's more painful, so you have a lot of have to track every single face and match 3D models, so like the eyes and a lot of experiments, like good ideas, bad ideas. But this test were actually became the inspiration for Sprawl 2. So I was like, that could be cool, like controlling human body. But for that project, like for that specific project, it was like, nah, it doesn't really work. Character design, finding a way to have an entity in which you can project your own emotion, your own interpretation. So even in the way people read or receive these projects, there's some kind of intellectual interactivity also in that. So it was really important to keep that vagueness. And is it an animal? Is it a human? Is it she or he? It's like unclear. Creepy, cute, not clear. So designing also again systems so that we can put together like emotions and translate these assets into code and then into interactivity, so that if you do something, he will react into a way. So yeah, Caroline, we do small team, we do everything. So the mouth of Bla-Bla is Caro, and then putting that onto the puppet, we were able to do a kind of a wide spectrum of emotions. This is Philippe, also a key, Philippe Lambert, musical composer. He for the language of Bla-Bla, he used Google Translate into this kind of Google Translate to a point where it was nonsense, but still had some kind of structure and kind of a weird logic, and then record these little snippets and put them together. And the musicality of it also was something important. I knew this project was, how could I say, niche. I was like, how can I access a kind of a critical mass of people? Is that tapping into the kind of the people in every community that would dig that kind of stuff? So we transcended the language. So the project, like the titles of the project were translated into 12 languages, but then after that, anybody could get it. And there was also a desire that if you're a gamer and a non-gamer, my mom, everybody could play with it. Again, like the structure into chapters. That was the premise. And at the bottom left, there was this little hourglass. So there was also this idea that if there's a chapter that you like, you can just tip the hourglass and just stay there forever. So there's something also, I think, that is interesting with presenting content on a computer, is that we're not on a analog platform, so we can suspend time and play with it. This is Edouard, a bit tired, and this is actually the code of Bla-Bla. So behind the simplicity of the little big head character, there is a lot of details. We had the chance to adapt the project into a physical exhibition at Gaité Lyrique in Paris. So we had a full floor in a museum, and we dissect each chapter into a place in the building, and transformed, like, instead of using the mouse, use the X, Y of the mouse, but say like, oh, if people are in the corridor, maybe you can use infrared cameras or a laser scanner. So it was the first time that we were actually seeing our audience. For the other project, like you launch a website and you drag a file, you put it on a server, you open your beer, and it's like, yay. And there was something super anticlimactic about, but then you get the stats and you get excited, and like, online project is amazing, but you lack that kind of cute face. And so for us, it was also a kind of a revelation to be able to kind of get into, kind of see people, interacting with the content, but it's the same asset, but we just kind of enhancing it, like plugging fans so that when it turns into a storm, you feel the wind, you touch the wall, you have something, and it's multi-user, so people are kind of are put into relation with each other. So for us, it was some kind of a revelation, and we learned a lot from that experience. That's in Japan, where we put bigger, more intense fans. This is another context. So like each context has its own sets of limitations. So we had a full floor in a museum in Paris, like amazing. But then we were in Montreal in the red light district. So how do we adapt? And in this case, it was more a one-on-one thing. What we thought it was interesting to kind of create a cause and effect between the piece and the people that triggers it. So there was this kind of code, like blinking color kind of bridge. So if it's purple or orange on the screen, you'll have the orange flickering on the podium. And again, the fans hidden from behind as a Marilyn Monroe trick. And that's again, like there was this idea of kind of tricking the language and defining Bla-Bla as a film for computers. Again, a web project, an interactive web project, but again, by deciding and defining that project as a film for computers, you get presented in film festival. So I thought it was really hilarious to have a Bla-Bla poster next to linear films, but I thought it was there was something interesting into changing the paradigm of how people receive our project, and by saying that it's a film for computer, there's this idea that it's emotionally driven. There's some kind of story that will be told, and you just shift the way you talk about it. So it's not about tech. It's not like what tech did you use? Are you the first to be doing that, or whatever? And I always try to navigate and avoid the kind of the classic buzzword, vocabulary associated with our medium. And VR, of course, is fragile in that context. Here, a couple of years ago, I met Aaron Koblin, who used to work at the Google Creative Lab, and we promised each other that we would work together, but again, like really open canvas. And by talking, exchanging, we thought it could be interesting to play with that idea of connecting device. The band Arcade Fire was recording an album at that time, Reflector. The album was strongly influenced by the Haitian culture. And I don't know if it's the right order to. I'll show you this before. So the idea of connecting device was that new ability to connect through WebSocket, for instance, a phone and a laptop. So I thought it could be interesting to transform the feeling of having a phone in your hand and transforming it into some kind of magical projector. So as you become a spectator, a projector, and at one point in the video, some kind of a protagonist in the experience. So the main inspiration was like things that were really tangible, like playing with lights, optical, prism, shadow puppets, holograms, and find a way that it would feel optical and not technological, so that we really have a genuine projector in your hand, and that it beams something on the surface of your laptop. So here we see like the feeling that we wanted to create. The song Reflector is about is it about this notion of representation and how we see things. And I thought it was, I wanted to explore that idea to use the screen as some kind of window between our world and another world, and really put the environment of the people that watch the video as part of the experience. The other thing I wanted to explore is this idea of blurring the lines between documentary and fiction. So we went to Jacmel in Haiti with a really small team with Axel, the protagonist, but really embraced how Jacmel was. So a lot of improvisation of encounters with people. So that was not staged. It happens that there was a flag parade, and we just kind of got into it and embrace the moment. And through this, how could I say, that feeling, we were also changing the way people kind of receive this emotionally. So it was interesting to see how we balance things that are controlled and things that are spontaneous and a surprise. So we were bridging the aesthetic of the carnaval, so with characters that we imagined, and use the VV, like the voodoo VV, as some kind of a doorway into a magical world. This VV became also, like, as we were developing the project of the video, Caroline was also developing the artwork of the album. So the two things were kind of intertwined, and there was this beauty about having like just graphic elements that would be reappropriated, and where with people could just play with it, kind of be interactive, but in a really primitive way. And it also acknowledge the era in which we live, that is really about ourselves, an era of the selfie, of reappropriation, and being the center of the interest. So for people that are more tech, this is the setup. A webcam, it's basically it's close to what VR systems are at the moment. Like, you have sensors that kind of detects where you are in space, and you have also a gyroscope and like accelerometer that are transmitted through network. So by combining the data from the phone, that is the gyroscope, you know if it tilts, and through the webcam, then you know if it's close or far. So this is what Edouard doing first test of just kind of mimicking the gyroscope data, but then you don't know where it is in space. So through, like, we made an image that could be detected by the webcam, and through camera vision, we were able to approximate where the phone is. Again, like, this was a really humbling process. Camera vision is really, really hard. You never know the context. Someone would be totally pitch black or like in front of a window. So it wasn't perfect, but it was working. So after that, you have this. You're able to create this. This is kind of before the experience starts, where you kind of explain the cause and the effect. So again, a lot of experimenting with physical stuff, optical objects, research of figuring out how can we play with light, distortion, chromatic aberrations, and then how to mimic these effects in code. Or so this is again experimenting with filters in real life, and then with that footage we were giving that to Edouard, and Edouard was trying to recreate those effects with code in with WebGL, JavaScript. So here on the left side is the video that is loaded in your browser, and on the right side is the shaders, the real-time effects that are applied on the video, and that is kind of dynamically changed through your interaction. This is again other experimentation we did, things that were shot on location and then things that were shot in studio, and try to make a balance between things that were uncontrolled with things that were really controlled. The aesthetic of the project was designed as some kind of a tool, a technological tool to create a connection between the spectator and the piece. So by using those dots, I knew that when I was going to Jacmel, it was going to be quite chaotic, really difficult to control. So I thought, why not design costume with just white dots, and that will be my technology. So basically, when I was in Jacmel, I completely forgot about, oh, I need this or that. We were just shooting, and those trackers became a bit like the nods of a puppet that you try to control, but you're kind of fighting against again a puppet that want to kind of let go. So these ideas were kind of then integrated into the cloth design, and those simple dots were tracked, and so nothing fancy, quite simple. And then if you have your phone, then you're able to, you try to control the protagonist, but she fights back, and so you're kind of put in relation with the protagonist into the video, and you're kind of this kind of godlike presence that try to control her. The reflector at one point in the project get broken, and at that time, you forget that the webcam is actually kind of you think it is used to track your phone. So at that time, there's this moment where you kind of realize that you're in the video, and in the phone, there's the protagonist. So there's this moment where the two worlds kind of swap, and you get kind of frozen into the video, and then that becomes some kind of Instagram moment, but that was spontaneous in the sense, and it was also ironic because the song is about criticizing a bit that culture. We then shared all the code, so it was all open source, and we kind of dissect to kind of explain how the logic of shaders, how we use a source video and then apply some input and deformation, and how it gets to an output. So there is also a kind of educational aspect of it. This is the second project I did with the NFB. Again, it was some kind of carte blanche, and with that project, I wanted to explore the notion of how we look at things, how we look at things change, and the mindset in which we are change I will restart that. The mindset in which we are changed the way we look at things. And I also wanted to kind of bring even closer the mechanic of video game, the really contemporary classic 2-joystick video game premise of you look around, you move forward, you make actions, and try to bridge that kind of second nature interaction with something that is cinematic, and put explore so the notion of space, time, and presence. That was in 2010 when I submitted this project to the NFB. So that was pre-VR. So by thinking about this idea, like, oh, we want to look around, we want to move, we came up with this equation of we will give the illusion that we move in space, but actually we move in a timeline of someone moving with the camera from one point to another. So it's a bit unclear, but in the sense that we have a video where I move from point A to point B into 20 frames. So if I give the illusion that I move forward, but actually I'm playing that video and I'm at frame 10, where in that video I'm further. So I started to talk with people that do films in domes, and I was like, wait a minute, this is awesome. Like, I will bring back the old QuickTime VR panoramic format. So I thought I was holding something completely new, but it was, I guess, in the air. So again, putting together like big conceptual axes and say, okay, we have time, we have a space, we have a character, who is the protagonist, what is the point of view, and just collecting intuition and create maps and then mechanics. There was also this idea that the way we relate to space has changed over the last couple of years, and that, again, that way of seeing an environment is familiar. This is me talking to public TV about bird watching. I was a that's embarrassing, but I put it because I've been sensitive about that mindset thing really early, like that idea that when I was going to birdwatch with my father, like I opened my sense and I was like, oh, listening to a song and then seeing some color in the trees, and that idea of ultra lucidity, a bit like when you travel and then you look at how people are dressed or little details. And when I was playing video games, I had that kind of similar feeling of, the sense open, and I was like, how can I bring that feeling into a web interactive experience? So again, things that you probably think and experiment a lot. What is the point of view? What is how do I put the camera? And the limitation of that first premise of moving a camera became the kind of the starting point of the creative process. This is a frame from the Racketeer documentary from the NFB, where it was one of the first handheld camera, and the NFB has been kind of the forefront of bridging tech and cinematography, and for me it was like, okay, like, yeah, we have this camera that shoots all around. How will that have an impact on how we capture the surrounding, our reality? I don't know if you've seen it. This is just a small extract. Actually, I'll just show. It's better just to. Basically, it's a walk in the wood. You move at your own pace. It's a bit the classic of you have keys to walk or run. You have a space bar and then an action key. So this is him. So go on, make your way. Stop to see the smallest things. No one waiting. No one keeping score. Again, similar premise. Bla-Bla. So this character is an extension of your sight. So wherever you walk, he will follow. So, and if at any moment I can look around and unfold kind of nature film vignettes. So we shot hundreds of these insect, flowers, plants, birds. And this idea is that, like the bit cliche thing of like, if you take time and look around, like beauty will unfold. So that was a bit the idea. So again, similar to the other, like a bit using music, generative music as some kind of leitmotiv to and bridging different aesthetic, something that is shot. If you look at I don't know if you see on the right, there's a river. So you see that, you can see the current, but then if you stop, like the current stop too. We use in the sky, we use dynamic light rays. So it's just a fixed framework, like it's pause, But by using this character alive and adding dynamic shaders, we create some kind of illusion of life and kind of hide the technological tricks. And you can see this is me. I had to be there to hold the camera. So the limitation became some kind of the fuel of say, okay, I will create this kind of shadow nemesis metronome guy that is, and again, open to interpretation. Everybody like read it different ways. And you get at one point into this kind of reinterpreted world where it's the same forest but hand-drawn. So this idea of how we perceive reality. So then you start to encounter other characters. You revisit your path, and basically it was this idea of rethinking how we relate to and how we see. So this again experiment of how where is that camera? This idea of deformation. So like instead of having tiny feet, like tricking my shoes and my squarish head so that it will look natural. So aesthetic research, kind of a message or content, and then technological restriction. So this was with an iPhone and just a mirror, just to have a feeling of this idea of following a path and having this kind of idea of a lifeline in a sense. Some research about juxtaposing different type of content. So in the character design, it was this idea of putting something that would stand out and be an extension. And since we were moving, in a really bumpy path, the character became also something soothing for the eye and for motion sickness, a bit by accident, by looking at that character that is always, if you look upstairs, he flies, if you you look behind, he follows you. So by having him always in the center of your face, even if the camera work wasn't perfect, the experience is comfortable. So it was a mix of 2D, like a series of drawing in every single position, but then put into a 3D space mapped on the video. So we looked a bit like an obscure cult in the darkness of the forest. Caro did her own kind of black box where when we see the macro videos of it, we wanted to make them feel as we were in the head of the character. So we use this kind of magnifying glass into this cardboard and create this kind of effect. It's Philippe sound recording. So this is us. Like you have the programmer, the designer, me, Philippe, the musician, and yeah, we are the protagonist. It's important for us to kind of keep it small and be involved in every aspect of the process. So as you can see here, I had a gyroscope at the other end of the pole, so that would keep the gravity quite steady. And I had a metronome in my ass, so that I could keep the speed, so that we have a steady. So it was really ghetto, as you can see, like nothing fancy. And then you have all this content that you haven't seen. You know how it is to work with GoPros. And then Stitch, you know that stuff, And then we use the video analysis to kind of a bit like Google Map do, to kind of recreate planes by analyzing every frames. So by analyzing every frame, we were able to create a path that would kind of give the illusion that it stick to the ground, and we did the same with my face, hiding the tracking points and putting this. Again, another example of video analysis. So by analyzing the movement of the camera and the height, we were able to create a virtual camera and then see the angles and the height of the ground. This is Philippe. Edouard developed a custom tool for music composition, like Euclidean rhythms, or like African rhythms that can intervene, then off sync. So Philippe could add as many modules as he could, and each module could change parameters, and each one he could then create arrays with MP3s, like just one sound or a sequence of sound, and also change the pace of it so that if you walk or you run, the music kind of evolve organically. We did a lot of, we pushed a lot the musical aspect of the project. This is another tool that we had for granulation, so pushing as much as we could with as less files as we could. So with one MP3, how we could generate infinity of sound with just one small file. We pushed the audio API so far that when we released the project, the Firefox browser had a bit of difficulty to process it. So the people at Mozilla asked us if we could share the project with them, and it became a benchmark for the engineers at Mozilla. So we're really proud that a weird psychedelic project could kind of enhance or make some kind of a universal platform better. and they pulled it out. 5 months after that, Firefox was at the same level as Chrome. So Caroline, when Edouard developed the sound tool for Philippe, was jealous because she wanted also to have a similar tool where not having to ask Edouard about changing things, but be able to fine tweak on her side. So she developed all the things by herself and made, and then have this kind of sets of controls where she can, add trees, change the look of it, the texture, and really refine, the experience to the level she wants. This is another example of, this is ink with mixed with gin to make texture, and then these splash of inks became height map. So with one JPEG, we were able to create infinity of relief. How do you say that? Of landscapes. Yeah. So again, that reflection of creating, with as less asset of possible, create as much diversity as possible. So this is just a screen grab of it. One last little thing I wanted to share was a little manifesto that we did a couple years ago. It was the Quebec cultural policy didn't acknowledge of our reality. Excuse me. And we wanted them to kind of understand what makes interactive, whatever, digital storytelling different. So I will read them. Interactive work is not a derivative of any other form of expression. It is an art form in itself. We must define the practice and support it through a unique process tailored to its needs and character. The industry of interactivity is a cultural industry. Its creator, not a service provider. It is only through applied support that the culture of authors will emerge. Producing interactive projects involve prototyping artistic and technological ideas. Code and programming are tools of this expression. It is necessary to create favorable conditions for the emergence of an interactive writing culture. The means of distribution constitute part of the creative act. Digital content has already outgrown the screen. The platform of its curation and distribution has not yet seen the light of day. Interactive works must be properly preserved so that future digital creators might know that they form part of a cultural lineage and history. I hope some of the things I'll say connect with your VR exploration, and if we have time, I would be happy to answer some of your questions. So thank you so much. Question?
Questions from the room?
Come on.
There's one there. Should we
Yep.
share the microphone?
Or you can say it loud.
Hi.
Hi.
You said at the beginning about just removing or getting past the interface.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm not a VR expert, but
Yeah.
You have this problem of this clunky headset
Yeah.
at the moment. What do you see happening to that in the next few years?
I don't know, to be honest. I agree that it's a problem and it annoys me in a sense. I avoid to do the crystal ball thing. I'm in such an industry that is all about that, what's next, that I try to protect myself from that and just kind of dedicate and focus on, okay, what do I have now? And what do I do? How do I make the best out of it? I would say for Way to Go, the VR adaptation was an accident because we developed that thing that was kind of a video game-ish thing. It was a browser-based, so you basically you saw what I showed you, but you can also do it in a headset and control it with a controller. But in a way, it was kind of the best of both worlds, in the sense that I was able to reach out a broader audience, and the experience sit in your office with the computer screen is good enough. But then when you put the headset, you have quite a different feeling about it. It's clunky, it's annoying. You have the cable and that, but still it brings something different to the equation. And for me, that was kind of a nice surprise. I guess they will be smaller to a point of invisibility or whatever. That's what we all dream. But for me, for now, it's how to juggle with accessibility, experience, and I try to reach or make projects that will be good enough in a flat version, that the headset thing will have some, that will, how could I say, will transform in a way the experience, but that it would still be relevant into a kind of a flat version. I don't know if it makes sense, but for me, it's in 2017, I think I want to reach more than a couple hundreds or thousands of people. Way to Go was half a million people saw it online, but as a traditional interactive experience. The VR experience was also did 40 festivals, but still it's pretty niche and elitist in a sense. So for me, it's juggling with these two things. There's a potential and something's really strong about that technology and how you relate in that context, but at the same time, it has some kind of limitation in its reach. So I try to find a balance. Yeah.
Just for the record, it is a web VR experience.
Yeah.
And it is accessible now through a web platform or VR or HTC.
Yeah, the fact that I was coming here, we just kind of kicked our butt to update it. It was broken since September, and since I knew I was coming here, we made extra efforts last week. So now it's 5 and Oculus, so in Chromium and Firefox Nightly, it works, and you can also with the touch stuff, it works. Yes. Yes.
What kind of things inspire you? I know you talked about the moment with the squirrel.
Yeah.
And also the voodoo diagrams.
Yeah.
But are there any particular content creators or overarching sources of inspiration that
Yeah. I would say it's mainly stuff, like real life stuff, like playing with a kite. That's for me a good analogy in how I embrace interactivity, because the wind is blowing in one direction. You have a sense of control. You can pull the string or let it loose, but still the wind is blowing in one direction. So as a director or an author, I'm the wind. You go that way. But then the person has a sense of ownership and control, or dancing with someone is another. So I would say I love illustration, books, weird animation, Japanese animation, where the narrative structure is really mind-boggling. I like to be challenged aesthetically, and so I like experimental animation for that. It's a really free form of expression, and it connects also again with the NFB that has this kind of long tradition with experimental films. But I would say like we're not a lot. Like it's a kind of a new ground, and we do our thing. So in my field, it's difficult. Like a lot of colleagues that I respect, but I wouldn't say that it's a source of inspiration. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing so much of your
Thanks.
creative process.
Thanks.
So I'm curious about when you work with different people, it seems like you work with some people a lot, and sometimes you work with others.
Yeah.
How do you, especially when the technology is new and
Yeah.
you're starting every project with like a blank
Yeah.
slate, how do you figure out like where you begin and where you end and where the next person comes in? How do you negotiate the
Yeah.
creative process with different people?
Good question, because I kind of forgot to. Normally, that's the kind of the first thing I say, and I forgot. I basically start like that close circle of talented people. We start from day zero. Everybody, day zero, at the same in the fog, and we with a machete, and we move forward. And my role is to say I don't know, as long as possible, and keep that tension of being intelligent and dig and smart and push and not be in the execution. And the magic with having it's kind of time consuming. So as the producer side of me is kind of protecting that ecosystem and convincing to put a lot of resource and money. Like we will spend a year full time on this. We'll have shitty camera and like us in cardboard, but we will pay these people properly for a long time. So I really invest in materials like brains. Yeah. So and then they pollinate, and that's the beauty, and that's what I'm proud of the project is the technology shine, the artistic aesthetic also shine, but I think it's because of that kind of cross-pollination and they have all their strength, but they are all also like they're not silos. So Caro, me, Philippe, we have a technological sensibility. Edouard is the tech genius, but still we understand and talk the same language. And at the same time, Edouard has good taste, and he's able to kind of do great shaders and not having like it works, but it's ugly. You know, he has. So I would say that's the motto of, and then we put the finger on something that works. There's like, that's garbage, that's garbage, that's garbage, and then boom. And then a couple of boom, and then we sculpt shape, and then they snap, and the project shapes up through that. So, but often like, I say I don't know, but the premise or the intention of the beginning, we get lost, but it always comes back to like the first meeting we had eating ramen. It gets back to that, but it's a long journey. But I think it's important, and especially in this kind of project, I think in innovation, like we talk too much. I don't use that much often, but I think if you want to get out of common ground, it takes time. And yeah, so I do like very few projects, but we spend a lot of time on them. Yeah.
Along the same lines, I have a question. Who do you need in your team? I mean, what kind of skills do you want when you design a team? Do you need
tech,
technology people, artists?
Yeah, no, very tech with taste. And or some kind of sensibility about it, and someone with taste, like an artistic vision, like someone, and then the rest, like the editorial and the story is kind of my turf, and then someone, but mainly in my project, it's either a band that push a song, or if it's not, I need someone. It's a big part of my of the project, the music aspect, because it becomes some kind of a language and a story by itself. So in my project, it's going to be kind of a composer, a developer, and someone, or not director, and that's it. It's really artisanal. And then when I shoot, like sometimes during the shoot, when I go to Jackmail, like we're 30, and then money disappear in 4 days, and I'm like, that's 6 months of work in 3 days, but you need that to. So I would say I try to keep as lean and small, the structure as small as possible, and having the hat of the producer, I can also choose the fight I want to have to make to kind of make bring the project to destination, and also like the other mini fights about how we present the project, how we distribute it. In the manifesto, we talk also about when you finish the project, it's not really the end of it. There's another part that is how you connect with the audience, and for me, it's part of the story or the experience. So I try to be involved also in that aspect.
How do you decide what project comes next?
It's really circumstantial. I never know. Like when I finish, I'm not good at I'm really mono. So I do a project and then it's done. I haven't planted other seeds. So it's there's nothing else. And then something pops up. So it's really circumstantial, I would say. And since we're a small team, okay, there's something, and I was like, do you want to do this? Sell, I don't like a syrup. I was like, no, I don't want to do commercial. So I will choose, be selective, but it's often kind of a circumstantial, like Sigur Rós, Arcade Fire was like encounters, Aaron Coblin, again, encounters. The National Film Board of Canada is like, we're being blessed by public funds. I don't know, but it's not kind of lucky, kind of a synchronicity. Yep.
How do you envision how the participant, both during the times of interaction and afterwards, may or may not be changed? Take that away.
Yeah, I was talking a bit about it earlier, but it's that idea of imagining, the possibles, but at the same time, the possibles are not that important. It's more the feeling of it. So, I'm not a fan of choose your own adventure, to choose that door, like rhizomic structure, because as a kid I read a lot of those books and I cheated all the time because I wanted to see what was on the other door, and the interactivity was quite frustrating because I was like, interactivity kind of punished me of not seeing, I want something that will elevate me and generate an emotion, not kind of, it's actually frustrating. So my project, it's infinite variation. I was doing exaggeration with my hyperactive nephew and my mom, but through that, it's smallish variation. Some people will pass some things, but it's not really important. It's more about a feeling, and I think VR is also about that. It's not about there's tons of different ways of seeing. It's more about how you engage with the content, and keeping that in mind. I think it's more about acknowledging the kind of things that people will do. So acknowledging the extreme behavior, so that like, I see you, haha. And then also like acknowledging no action. And then the in-between is a kind of a gradient. But it takes a bit of understanding of human nature, but not in a, really scientific. It's a kind of a feeling and intuition, I would say. That's how I embrace that.
Do you imagine there's a takeaway once you've had this experience that affects?
What do you mean? Like, if there's a takeaway?
Well, it seems like such a real interaction.
Mm.
And just like all our interactions,
Yeah.
we grow and change as
Yeah.
a result of them. And this is an interaction with another world that you have to
Yeah.
come up, you know what I mean?
I think it just triggers, like for me, the beauty of interactive stuff is that it triggers kind of another place that brings back like playfulness and something visceral. So you receive it and analyze it through another channel, I would say, in some ways. So I think that's one of one aspect of and one of the quality of that medium is to use that in a reflector. I kind of play that thing so when the protagonist breaks the mirror, then you see yourself, and then after that the reflector is broken. So the other half of the video, if you try to interact, it just kind of it says break free. So you're forced to kind of let go and just watch. And the contrast of, with your phone and then sit down and watch a bit like you would a cinematic piece is a kind of a interesting contrast, in the sense that there's something also like really awesome about sitting and just watching and acknowledging the beauty of it and also just the different. It's not one better than the other, but I thought it was cool to combine the both ways of engaging in a single piece. Yep.
You created this very powerful open source platform. What is it for?
Oh no, it's not a platform. See, we shared the code of Just a Reflector. So if you go Just a Reflector, and I think you click on technology, like the code is there, so you can like the camera vision stuff. But it's almost utopic, to be honest. Like it's like, oh yeah, we shared it, but it's like hundreds and pages of code. So it's just kind of, it's cool, but to be honest, it's just kind of what to do with that. And we also kind of use libraries. Like there's something beautiful about open tech. There's something the other side, like it breaks off and anyway, it's not all perfect, but there's that thing that is cool about sharing knowledge and using bits and pieces. But to be honest, like if you go there, like manage your expectation, you might. Yeah. Yes. Oh.
Is there an interaction, physical, digital, that you envy and you wish that the emotional response you could create, to what you could create?
I'm doing a public art project for next summer. I'm really excited about it. Like it's kind of back to the museum with kids thing. It's in the park, known where like a lot of skaters and hobos, like really rough place, and try to embrace that space and not be the gentrification multimedia artist, and make something that is meaningful and that will engage the people from that park, but also passerby. So I'm really interested in that, do that kind of multi-user thing, premise of like, okay, how 10 person, or like if there's one person in the park, you will have a meaningful, cool, rich experience. But if there are 10 people and they all do different things, how each one will feel that it's not kind of abstract and oh yeah, we're part of interacting, that each person kind of understand its input. And there's a beauty in that. But I want to kind of create bridges between strangers so that the interface and experience is kind of a premise for something, I don't know, more cool. You know, so I just kind of, I wouldn't talk, or I don't think I not necessarily talk, but there will be a moment while these two strangers like have something, like do something. So I'm pretty excited about that. I think it's going to be a headache. It's already a headache, but it's kind of a interesting one.
Can you say what material you're using?
Yeah, concrete. So that's also like one of the thing that I thought was like our project breaks, like the way to go thing. Web VR broke after 6 months. You know, it's like ridiculous. So there's a frustration about the fragility of a medium, and be able to do something physical. It's like, okay, I'll do, the interface will be something that will last 40 years, and that will be kind of protected from obsolescence. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.